So, with the release of Spider Man No Way Home, there are now 27 movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I thought I'd give you guys my very first tier ranking. Welcome to Joey's Movie Blog. I'm your host, Joey Stramberg, and today I'm going to do a tier ranking for the MCU, which is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I do have my issues with the MCU, as everyone probably does, but I can't help but marvel at the accomplishment that Kevin Feige has done with this. Also, please keep in mind that this is just my opinion, and I this is just my opinion, and just respect it. Anyway, let's get into this. So, how I have it divided up is I got top tier, which is where my best of the best are going to go. My great tier, which are movies that I think are great, but not quite top tier. My enjoyable but flawed, my meh Marvel movies, and my bottom tier Marvel movies. So I guess let's get started with Guardians Volume 2. So I'm a massive fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, and I thought this was a pretty good sequel. And I think that it really delivers an emotional punch towards the end, and I think with the stuff with Yondu's great. This second act does meander a bit, but it doesn't meander enough for me not to put it in the great tier. So next we get the two Ant-Man movies, starting with Ant-Man and the Wasp. I thought it was a good palate cleanser for the ending of Infinity War. I don't really have any major flaws with it outside of the color grading, but I also don't like it's not the most memorable one. So I'm going to put this one in the enjoyable but flawed tier. I think that the color grading, and I'm also not the biggest fan of the villains in this one. And then the first Ant-Man, I think, has a great story. Um, and I think that with Paul Rudd as Ant-Man is top tier casting. It does retread the plot of Iron Man. I'm not the biggest fan of Corey Stoll as Yellow Jacket, but I think that the relationship between Scott and Cassie really carries this movie and his desire to get with her. So I'm going to put this in the great tier. Uh, Avengers Age of Ultron. I'm a pretty big fan of the first Avengers movie, and I was really excited for this one. And while I enjoyed it, it didn't quite live up to my expectations. I wasn't crazy about Ultron being another Tony Stark ripoff, or not like just this evil version of Tony Stark, but yeah, I mean, I put it in the enjoyable but flawed tier. I also was not crazy about how they handled Quicksilver, but Vision and Scarlet Witch were great. Avengers Infinity War, man oh man, what a movie this was. This movie had every right to fail. It was balancing like so many characters and so many like stories that I wasn't sure how they're going to pull it off, but they did. And Thanos is the best MCU villain in my opinion. And I think that Thor is the best he's ever been in this one. And for that, I'm putting it in the top tier. Next up is Black Panther. Now, this is a movie that I've always found great, but I've always found it overrated. I think that story wise, it's top tier MCU, but CGI wise, it's kind of like that third act is very would be make it like in the bottom tier. But I think with a great performances from Chadwick Boseman and Michael B. Jordan. While it's not quite top tier because of the CGI, I think it is in the great tier. Captain America: Civil War. This movie really balanced the uh, conflict between Stark and Steve pretty well, and um, I enjoyed the whole airport battle, and I think Zemo is a great villain, and it gave us our introduction to Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and our in the late great Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, and I'm gonna put it in the great tier or the top tier. Captain America: The First Avenger, I've always found to be underrated. Yeah, it's my least favorite of the trilogy, but especially with how Endgame ended, I just really enjoy this one. I think that with other movies, it's been made better. I enjoy the World War II aspect to it, and yeah, I'm going to put this in the great tier. I'll probably put it in front there. Captain America: Winter Soldier. Just to get this out of the way, it is a it's a top tier. I think that this movie has the best action of the MCU, and I think that it really made Captain America the one of the, probably my favorite MCU character. I think it did a great job kind of showing how he wasn't used to all this to being in the new time, and I just think that they did a pretty good job with that whole thing, uh and I just love the emotional fight between him and Bucky. Doctor Strange, directed by Scott Derrickson. I think this probably has the best visuals of an MCU movie. It really did something really cool with like the mirror dimension stuff, and then Benedict Cumberbatch is great. But I do think this one is a templated MCU movie. Benedict Cumberbatch kind of feels, or Doctor Strange just feels like another version of Tony Stark, but and Mads Mikkelsen, who I keep forgetting is in the MCU, is one of the worst MCU villains. And I'm going to put this in the enjoyable but flawed tier. Next up is Guardians of the Galaxy. James Gunn being in the first movie in the MCU, and it just delivers a great, diverse cast of characters with a fantastic soundtrack, great visuals, a meh villain, but he's not bad enough for me to leave him out of the top tier. Iron Man 2. I think that this movie has good moments, but it really just feels like setup for other Marvel movies. So for like the Avengers and all that, and I'm gonna put this in the okay tier. Iron Man 3, I actually think is great. I'm gonna put it in the great tier, right between Guardians and Black Panther. Yeah, I enjoy this one quite a bit. I enjoyed the Shane Black dialogue, and yeah, the Mandarin twist I'm not particularly crazy about, but and the third act is the best third act of this trilogy. And now we get to the one that started it all, uh, Iron Man 1. This movie did such a great job laying the groundwork for what we have now, and it's all because of Jon Favreau. He did such a great job with this one and gave us one of the best castings in a comic book movie. And I actually prefer Terrence Howard as Rhodey more than I do Don Cheadle, and this one is going into the top tier. Spider-Man Homecoming, I really like this movie a lot. I think that it delivers one of the best MCU villains, my favorite outside of Thanos, and it has some great humor. I enjoy the high school aspect of it, especially now more than ever. And but I will say, I think this probably has some of the weaker actions, which prevents it from being in the top tier. But I definitely think it is great. Uh, Next up is the Incredible Hulk. The third act is pretty fun, but I think the movie's overall pretty forgettable. So I'm going to put it in the okay tier. And yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say. I think Edward Norton was fine in the role. I think it's better than what a lot of people say. And, I enjoy the third act, but it also just feels very inconsequential to the rest of the MCU. Now we get to the one that started it all, the event, or not the one that started it all, but the one that really made me feel this universe come into full form with the Avengers. Joss Whedon did such a great job with this movie. Say what you will about him right now, but he did a pretty good job with this one. The Battle of New York is iconic as hell, and it has one of my favorite Hulk moments where he's just punching Loki. And I am going to, or where he's like flipping Loki around, and I'm going to put this in the top tier. Thor the Dark World, let's just get that out of the way. It's bottom tier easily. Like, there's no question about it. It's pretty forgettable and pretty bad. I think that the romance is dull as hell, and yeah, I don't like this one. And Malekith is probably the worst MCU villain. And then we get to Thor, another pretty forgettable one, but I don't think it's bad necessarily. So I'm gonna put it in the okay tier. I think there's a great moment where he's like, another, and it gives us the introduction to Loki, who is the lead of his own TV show. And yeah, Thor Ragnarok. This is my favorite of the Thor movies by a country mile. I think Taika Waititi put this great Flash Gordon energy into it, and the immigrant bridge fight scene was fantastic, and I'm putting it in the great tier. And it also gave me one of my favorite characters, Korg. And yeah, it looks like we got. Oh, thanks, Josh, for the outro idea. But yeah, next up we get to Captain Marvel. Now, you got to keep in mind, I don't hate Brie Larson like some people do, but that doesn't mean I don't not like this movie. And like, it doesn't mean that I have to like the movie, and it's pretty much bottom tier. I don't like the whole Nick Fury thing, and yeah, the way they showed Nick Fury losing his eye soured me, and I don't think Captain Marvel's that likable of a character. She's fine. Hopefully they improve on her in the sequel. Next up, we get to Avengers Endgame. What a satisfying conclusion this was. Such a great job they did with this. I can't commend them enough. The portal sequence just makes me cry. And it has my favorite moment in the MCU where Steve is dancing with Peggy. Easily my favorite moment in the MCU. Absolutely deserves into the top tier. Next up is Far From Home. A lot that I like here. I think Jake Gyllenhaal is pretty good as Mysterio, despite my issues with Mysterio as a character. And yeah, I think the whole bus scene is one of the worst moments in a Spider-Man movie, and I can't stand Brad. I think the whole plot line with Tony Stark entrusting Peter with glasses is really stupid. Like, he didn't know he was going to be coming back. It was just really stupidly handled. And it's like, so Tony Stark didn't even know he was going to die in Endgame, and had this plan for, and like he didn't even know it was going to work. So like, what was the point of this plot, of the plot line? It makes no sense. All I'm going to put it in the enjoyable but flawed tier. I think has great Spider-Man action, but I think overall it has a pretty weak story. And I enjoy the stuff with him and MJ. But like, what was the point of making Nick Fury Talos? I don't know. Black Widow. I was really vibing with this movie for the first 2/3. But I wasn't crazy about how they handled Taskmaster and Ray Winstone's character. And the third act has some of the worst CG I have ever seen in a Marvel movie. I'm going to put this in the okay tier. I enjoy it enough to buy it, but it is perfectly okay. I think the action is pretty good. Next up, we got Eternals. Oh boy, I'm not looking forward to talking about this movie.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Eternals. It's a visually stunning movie, but it has the messiest story of any MCU movie, in my opinion, and it has really bad character work. No, I don't have an issue with the fact that there's a gay character, that there's people of color. All that stuff is on the outside. I'm looking on the inside of this film, and what I see is a poorly constructed mess. A beautiful, poorly constructed mess, but a very poorly constructed mess. It's easily my least favorite movie of the MCU, and it goes in the bottom tier. Next up, we got Shang-Chi, which has one of the best villains. I really like Sammy Liu as the lead. Aquafina really steals the show. I didn't find Shang-Chi's sister to be as interesting, but it doesn't prevent it from being a top tier. And also, I just got to say, it has the best fight choreography I've seen in a Marvel property since Daredevil. And yeah, and Tony Wow as the villain was great. And then No Way Home, I'm still processing this movie. Like, I went into this movie skeptical as hell, and I came out loving it. Tom Holland's the best he's been, and I'm glad that we finally get to see the MCU Spider-Man on his own, and it goes into my top tier. I really loved it. I'm doing a spoiler talk with my good friends over the 6 Geeks film podcast. I can't wait to discuss it with you guys over there. And that's my MCU ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope to do one, like, I want to do a Star Wars one leading up to Book of Boba Fett, which I'm looking forward to a lot. I plan on doing one for the TV shows once Hawkeye wraps, because I have not talked about my thoughts on the shows yet. So I'm really interested in that. If you like this video, click that like button and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.